Hello, class. Mr. Fino here. This is Unit 8, Lesson 2 on the rise of the Roman Republic. So, in this lesson, we will learn about the characteristics of the Roman Republic and how they changed over time. All right, so I'm going to start with a bit of a story that kind of illustrates how the Roman Republic came to be. So, it's the way it starts is one day. So initially, in this area in Rome, in Italy, it was ruled by Etruscan rulers, so Etruscan princes. Um, and one day, two Etruscan princes, as we see here, visited the famous oracle at Delphi. Right, and she made predictions. She spoke to the dead and did all sorts of stuff like that in Greece. Right, is where this took place. And a Roman named Lucius Junius Brutus traveled with them. And what happened was at Delphi, the princess asked the oracle which of them would be the next king of Rome. And the oracle answered, "The next man to have authority in Rome will be the man who first kisses his mother." So, hearing this prediction, Brutus pretended to trip. He fell on his face, and his lips touched the earth, which is often considered the mother of all living things. So here we see an image of this scene. There's uh, Lucius Junius Brutus right there. And then back in Rome, Brutus led the revolt that eliminated the Etruscan kings. So the oracle's mysterious words came true to some degree because Brutus became one of the first leaders of the new republic. All right. And that was them ruling themselves. All right. So let's get on to the content here. So, what did Rome look like under Etruscan rule? So, between 616 and 509 BCE, Etruscan monarchs ruled over Rome. So, here we can see Etruria, which is the Etruscans, is the orange area here. So, they ruled over most of North Italy, north of Rome. And so, Etruscan individuals were in charge of Rome. So here's the Etruscans, and they were monarchs. They were the kings of Rome, right here. And Roman society was divided into two classes. It was the Patricians and let's say this right, the Plebeians. What did Rome look like under Etruscan rule? So the Patricians came from a small group of wealthy landowners. Um, and an elected group of patricians known as fathers of the state advised the Etruscan king. Um, so, kind of like in Greece, some of the assemblies of the aristocrats, right? And so patricians, they controlled most of the land and held important military and religious positions. Next question, what did Rome look like under Etruscan rule? So the plebeians were the poor majority, making up 95% of the population. So the vast majority of people in Rome were in this plebeian group, and they were poor. And this group was made up of peasants and laborers, right? Craftspeople and shopkeepers. And while plebeians could not hold important positions, they were still required to serve in the army. They didn't have a choice, right? They were forced to serve in the Roman army. And here's the question, how did Etruscan rule come to an end? Well, in 509 BCE, as that story that I previously went through mentioned, a group of patricians led by Lucius Junius Brutus, here he is, rebelled and drove out the Etruscan king. And so they were able to eliminate the monarchy and start a republic in which elected officials ran the government. But, it wasn't everybody. It was just the patricians. So how did the patricians set up this new government? So the patricians, first off, the patricians excluded the plebeians from the government. Right? They did not allow them to participate in any kind of way. Most of the power went to the Senate, which was a group of 300 patricians that were elected by patricians. So again, all about the patricians. Um, the elected senators in this group of 300 were they served for life, and the Senate also elected two consuls that shared command of the army. Again, patricians, and the Senate advised the consuls whose decisions were the law. How did the patricians keep plebeians out of power? So only patricians could participate in government or become senators, consuls, and the plebeians had to obey all of the government's decisions. Because laws were not written down, like we see here, this is Hammurabi's Code, which you learned about in our Mesopotamia unit. That back then they were even writing down the laws. Right? They wrote down the laws so everyone could see them. They knew what was expected of them. But that wasn't the case here in early Roman Republic. Patricians did not write the law down. The reason being, they could change or interpret the laws to benefit themselves and further mistreat the plebeians. All right, so here we have the big conflict, known as the conflict of the orders. So the plebeians had to unite and fight for equality in the government. They had to work together. They made up the majority, 95%, but they had to work together to do this. So this struggle between the patricians and the plebeians is known as the conflict of the orders, right? Because these were the two main social classes during this period. So specifically during times of war, the rivalry between the patricians and the plebeians grew especially heated, right? Because the plebeians, they resented the fact that they were forced into wars that were entirely decided by the patricians. They had no say in it. So like here's the Senate, say, with patricians, and he's like, well, we must go to war. And all the while, the plebeians are sitting by and they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? We didn't decide that. It's not fair. So in 494 BCE, the plebeians marched out of the city and camped on a nearby hill, refusing to return until their demands were met. So I kind of like this. It's sort of a semi-peaceful way of doing things, right? They just left and they said, our group is so big, we do so much work in Rome, we pretty much run Rome, right? You need us, right? So because the plebeians made up 95% of the population, work in the city and farms came to a stop, putting the city of Rome in crisis. Also, without the plebeians, the patricians worried the army could not defend the city, right? They made up the vast majority of the army, right? That they were forced into. So the patricians were like, well, if we get attacked right now, we're done for. So yeah, the plebeians were like, they need us, right? And ultimately, the patricians had little choice but to compromise with the plebeians. All right, so what did compromise between the patricians and plebeians look like? Well, the patricians agreed to allow the plebeians to elect officials called tribunes of the plebs. And in these tribunes, they represented plebeians in the Senate and with the consuls, right? So they just kind of it provided them some sort of representation within the Senate. Tribunes also eventually gained the power to veto or overrule actions by the Senate. So that's a power that the president of the United States have. He can veto things or overrule them. And also the number of tribunes expanded from 2 to 10. Also, the plebeians elected a lawmaking body called the Council of Plebs, but they only created laws for the plebeians. So it's like, well, that doesn't make sense, right? Only for the plebs. What about the patricians? They're kind of still their own separate special group. All right. So how did the plebeians achieve full equality in the government, which they eventually did? So over the next 200 years, the plebeians conducted a series of protests to win political equality. In 451 BCE, the patricians agreed to publish the laws on tablets known as the 12 Tables. Right. So out in public, the laws are posted on the 12 tables. This way, the patricians could not change the laws at will because they were doing that before to take advantage of the plebeians. They couldn't do that anymore because the laws are out in the open and everyone knew them. Also, in 367 BCE, a new law stated that one of the two consuls had to be a plebeian. So one was a patrician, but one had to be a plebeian. Um, and by extension, because former consuls held a seat in the Senate, plebeians could now become senators as well. So they had one of the consuls had to be a plebeian, and they were allowed to be in the Senate. And um, also in 287 BCE, the plebeians earned the right to pass laws for all Roman citizens. So the Citizens Association could approve and reject laws, as well as nominate consuls, tribunes, and members of the Senate. So you can see here the setup, right? You've got your two consuls, one of each class, patrician, plebeian. You've got your senators, again, a mixture. You've got the tribune of the plebs to represent the plebeians. And then eventually, ultimately, you've got the Citizens Association, which is made up of both patricians and um, plebeians. All right. Last question here. How did the Roman Republic inspire future governments? So, the Roman government inspired future European and American leaders. So, think of like the founding fathers here. Uh, Rome was a government ruled by a set of basic laws known as a constitution. Right. So, we have a constitution in the United States, and we all have to live by it. Future leaders took from the ideas of elected assemblies, citizenship, and civic duty. Civic duty meaning like it's your responsibility as a citizen to participate in the government. Um, Rome had a system in which its government bodies checked each other's powers. So this is known as checks and balances, which I'll show you in the next slide. And then Rome was inspired by republicanism, which means that the government should ultimately be ruling for the good of the people. All right, so that idea about checks and balances. In America, we have three bodies of government. We've got the legislative body, which is people that make the laws. We have the executive branch, which is the president, and we have the judicial branch, which is the juries and the Supreme Court. And as you can see here, they all kind of check on each other's power so that none of them get too powerful. So, for example, the president nominates judges and he can veto legislation, but the judicial branch can declare the presidential things he's doing unconstitutional, and the legislative branch can impeach the president. So you can see it all kind of works together to prevent anyone from getting too much power. All right, so in this lesson, we learned about the characteristics of the Roman Republic and how they changed over time. All right, thank you.